Bit of background. I, 36 female, lost my husband 5 years ago. Crime has increased in my area lately, so I got 2 security cameras, which has stopped multiple break-ins. My elderly neighbor called me this afternoon for help, because twice in the past few days she's had what seems to be giant rotten salami dumped in her front yard. Last night she heard/saw someone walking back and forth in front of her window at 11 p.m. The weird point was the dumped salami, about 20 pieces, about palm size around cut, about 10 centimeters thick, spread across about a 7-meter area. English isn't her first language, so she asked me to help her call a non-emergency police line to request extra patrols around the area. I told the cop if she heard anything and she'd call me and I would go check it out. He told me to have my husband go check, which I brushed over. After a bit more talking, I said she would call me if she was scared and I would go check. And the cop again said to send my husband to check for her. After some more chat about the neighbors not being helpful, the cop again said, "You should send your husband over to check on her." When I actually said, I was actually a widow. I was also in the US Marines, living in Australia now, so I know how to take care of myself, which they didn't know. But I'm so hurt and insulted that they would immediately assume that I had a husband to go check instead of me. Sure, I can throw his ashes at an intruder. I don't try to pass my trauma on to others, but he was so insistent I sent my husband over. Like, why? The whole interaction has made me sick to my stomach that I had to specifically say that my husband was dead for him to take me seriously. Lots of details left off because of the character count, but this basically covered the main points. I want to call and report him for trying to force me to send my dead husband over. After I made it clear I'll be supporting my neighbor. I don't want to be a Karen though, but the whole exchange left me sick to my stomach. Am I in the wrong? You're not in the wrong. It's funny how when you ask cops to do their supposed job, ensuring that a neighborhood is safe, they tell you to do it yourself or send your husband. Understandable that all the assumptions this cop was making would be upsetting to you, and telling him to get lost would be the least outrageous thing you could do. Don't know if a report will do anything, but you certainly wouldn't be wrong to make one. As if every man is a big muscular man that can fight bad guys. But let's say the husband also uses a wheelchair, or is blind, or what if a pair of 2 women calls? Or oh no, a single woman. This cop made it so easy for himself instead to do his job. I would report him. Not everybody is such a tough cookie as OP. Not in the wrong and I'm sorry for your loss. Definitely not in the wrong. You can call and complain, but I'm not clear what you think is going to happen. The cop suggestion that you send your husband over is pretty obviously rooted in the if there is a male intruder doing weird stuff around this lady's house, it's probably better to send a guy over rather than another lady. The cop's assumption that you have a husband and that you'll be in more danger than this hypothetical husband is obviously rooted in sexism. But also, do you think other cops wouldn't do the exact same thing? But it also clearly has nothing to do with your actual husband's death. This cop had no way of knowing you were a widow or that you're a Marine. He's just thinking, it'll probably be better if a man checked it out, in case this guy is some pervert or whatever. I am very sorry for your loss, and it sounds like some of the intensity of your response is really rooted in your grief. If it's going to make you feel any better, I would say go ahead and call. But I'm very unconvinced that they will take this complaint very seriously. I work for maintenance at my complex. This girl just moved in for a job in the city. She randomly appeared with a dog. So I looked her profile up in our system and noticed that she did not have a dog on the lease. The dog seems good and he doesn't bark throughout the day. I just felt like it was wrong for her to bring a dog without putting the dog in a lease. Quite frankly, cheap. I told the leasing office and they have notified her to get rid of the dog or put it on the lease. She used to greet me if we crossed paths, but now she turns the other way or ignores me. I know the leasing office told her that I notified them. Am I in the wrong for letting them know that she brought a dog? Well, you are in the wrong. You had to take time out of your day to look up if she had a dog or not. What if she was dog sitting or keeping the dog for a friend while they were sick? Now she has to come up with a pet deposit and pet rent because you have to be nosy. I think pet deposits and pet rent are nonsense. Kids do more damage to apartments than animals do, but parents don't have to pay kid deposits. I wouldn't speak to you either. You are in the wrong. If the dog isn't an issue, why snitch? If the dog becomes a problem, the office would eventually find out anyway. It is possible that she couldn't afford the pet fees at the time. Also, in my opinion, you looking her up in the system for this reason wasn't really warranted. It's creepy, and I consider it an abuse of your privileges. You are in the wrong. Why do you have access to residents' private information like that? Why were you stocking up in her life? If you work maintenance, then the only thing you need to know is the name of the renter, what is wrong with the apartment and where. This was a creepy overstep. Edit. Okay, I have read almost all of these responses and I get it. It was a creepy thing to do. I didn't think further into it. I should have put myself into her shoes before writing about this, because if I was a woman and a man did this to me, I'd be creeped out as well. I have learned my lesson and will refrain from doing any of this from here on out. Edit 2. Some of the comments are really getting out of hand. I don't have any interest in her. I was just curious since I kinda know which dogs belong to which owners. I know I made a mistake and I will not do it again. When my son was born, my wife picked the most atrocious name that I have ever heard in my life. As soon as I heard it, I knew that he would be bullied horribly. I tried really hard to give her alternatives, but she wouldn't budge and threatened divorce. So like a coward, I let it happen. It's still the biggest regret of my life. My prediction came true when my son was bullied horribly in grade 2. It got so bad that he begged to not go to school anymore. I tried to let him be homeschooled, but my wife kept saying that he's just exaggerating. In the end, I somehow convinced her to let him change classes, but it didn't end there. By 4th grade, he would start crying in his sleep and screaming. He would tell us how he had nightmares of being bullied again, and my wife again dismissed it. I wanted to divorce her then and there, but I knew that I would never be able to see my son again if I did. My son would have no one to talk to, so I stayed with her again. The least I could do was secretly take him to my friend who was a therapist, and for a while it got better. Fast forward to now, my son is 17 and will start university next year, and he wants to legally change his name. He doesn't want to be bullied in university too. And I'm all for it, but my wife is saying that I poisoned him and that she'll disown him if he does so. This time I supported my son fully, which is something I should have done a long time ago. And now, we're both kicked out of the house. I am seeing a lawyer tomorrow and I will probably divorce her as well. I think I might be in the wrong if I divorce my wife and change my son's name. Also, I'm afraid that maybe I did turn him against her. Edit. We left the house and she was screaming at us to get out, and we're pretty sure our neighbors would have called the cops if we waited any longer. And now for some comments. You're not in the wrong. Your wife has trivialized your son's feelings on this matter enough. He's legally able to change his name, and you're finally able to cut ties without losing the ability to see your son. Go forth and be free, the both of you. Not in the wrong. Your wife sounds crazy. What's your son's name? Why did she name him that? Also, you should have called her bluff 17 years ago. He's almost 18, can't he just do it himself? Is your wife rich? And is the deed to the house in her name only? I don't understand why everyone tiptoes around this wife. Quote, I think I might be a jerk if I divorce my wife and change my son's name. No, you wouldn't be in the wrong. Your wife is neglecting her son, and she threatened divorce previously if she didn't disgrace your son with an atrocious name. You're almost 2 decades later. Quote, also, I'm afraid that maybe I did turn him against her. No, she did it to herself, neglecting her own child and dismissing his feelings. She's a monster. Last night, I, 26 female, was walking our 2 dogs, 8 male and 7 female. I like to walk the dogs while my husband is on his way home from work, so he can pick us up on the way and we can grab dinner. It's about 7:30 p.m. when I see a small boy alone in an empty lot. Now we're walking on a sidewalk on the busiest road in town. And there is a couple fast food places around us, so there is also others around. He is under a street lamp, but again, it's getting late. I stopped to ask him where his parents are and he said he's waiting for them. I can't get super close to him because our male dog can be unpredictable around small kids. So we're basically just shouting at each other from around 10 feet apart next to a busy road. So it's also hard to hear him. He has a phone and he occasionally will talk to someone on it. I'm not getting a ton of information from this kid other than his parents' names are Mom and Dad, and he lives down the street. Grandma is supposed to be watching him, but she doesn't know he left because she was in her room with the door closed. His 13-year-old sister is still at home, but she knows he left. So I text my family in our Discord and they think he could be bait for trafficking. Now I'm a small girl, think like 5'2", 110 pounds, and I have my 2 large dogs, but I don't like taking risks, so I call the non-emergency line and ask for an officer to come and wait with us until his parents show. By now my husband has arrived because I texted him my location. I put the dogs in his car and sat with the boy. He's on the phone with his mom, so I talked to her, and she said she just ran out to the store for 10 minutes and grandma should have been watching him. He sneaks out all the time. Cop shows up 10 minutes after I called, right as the mom pulls in, and she looks pretty annoyed that I called the cops. She's obviously annoyed at her son. I asked the cop if I can leave and he said yes. So I'm out of there. From start to finish I waited with the boy for almost half an hour. And here is where I may be in the wrong. The kid said he lived down the street and the address he gave me was a 3-minute walk. I feel bad calling the cops on a mom just trying to do her best. I would hate for CPS to get involved in a situation that just turned out to be an accident or bad timing. I have no idea what all that mom has to deal with, but also I had no idea of knowing if this kid was escaping a bad home life, or if he was actually bait for trafficking. Am I in a wrong? Not in a wrong. You were doing what you thought was right for the child. It wasn't malicious, and the mother should be glad that someone wanted to take care of her kids when no one else was. If anything was amiss, it was a right move. If nothing was amiss, no harm done. Not in a wrong. You couldn't know that and you did what seemed right at the time. The kid could have been abducted or harmed. You were right to wait with him anyway. A little boy isn't supposed to be in the street on his own, and this was vastly irresponsible. There are so many potential dangers in this story. Not in the wrong. You did the right thing. You couldn't be sure that child wasn't in danger, so you got someone who could help to do so.